Content warning. This documentary covers sensitive criminal case material, including child abuse and sex trafficking. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Greetings and welcome to all our dear listeners. Welcome to the 5th episode of the documentary series, The Epstein Files: Roots of a Nightmare. Thank you for being with us this far on this journey through this complex and dark case. In previous episodes, we followed Jeffrey Epstein's journey from childhood in Brooklyn to the heights of power on Wall Street. We examined his network of influence with Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell. We traveled to the island of horror in the Caribbean and then analyzed his mysterious death in a Manhattan jail cell. Today, we turn to the most important part of this case: the victims, justice, and the legacy Epstein left behind. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but many questions remain unanswered. His victims are still waiting for justice. Thousands of pages of documents have been released, but many secrets remain unrevealed. Today, we want to see what happened after Epstein's death. Who is held accountable? And most importantly, has justice been served for the victims? Let's answer these questions together. Chapter 1. The Victims. Voices Finally Heard. For years, Epstein's victims lived in silence. They were afraid. They were ashamed. And most importantly, they didn't believe anyone would believe them. But finally, the day came when their voices were heard. Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre was one of the bravest victims. In 2015, she sued Ghislaine Maxwell, accusing her of introducing her to Epstein in 1999, when she was just 16 years old, with promises of a job and travel opportunities. She said Maxwell quickly drew her into Epstein's predatory orbit. In her testimony, Giuffre said that over the years, she was abused by Epstein and his friends. She also named Prince Andrew among her accusers. She said that in 2001, when she was 17 years old, Andrew touched her breast at Epstein's apartment in Manhattan. Maxwell denied the allegations, and the case was settled in 2017 with a confidential out-of-court agreement. According to reports, Maxwell paid Giuffre millions of dollars, although the exact amount was never disclosed. Virginia Giuffre passed away in April 2025. Her posthumous memoirs contain several specific allegations related to Andrew. Her family said she fought for justice until the last days of her life. Jane, a pseudonym, was 14 years old when Maxwell introduced her to Epstein in 1994 while she was eating ice cream at a summer arts camp in Michigan. She testified that Maxwell was sometimes present in the room during the sexual abuse she endured for years. Crying in court, she said, she seemed so normal, like it was natural. But none of this was natural. Jane continued, I flew to New Mexico to meet Maxwell, who said Epstein wanted to see me. I felt my heart sink. I didn't want to see him. I was frozen with fear. Kate, a pseudonym, was 17 years old when she fell into Epstein and Maxwell's trap in 1994. She testified that she first met Maxwell at her home for tea and cookies through a 35-year-old man she was dating. A few weeks later, she returned to Maxwell's home, where Epstein was present, and at Maxwell's request, gave him a foot massage. A few weeks later, Kate was again asked to give Epstein a massage. When the prosecutor asked if she was a trained masseuse, Kate said no. In her testimony, she said, Ghislaine led me to the massage room and Epstein was there with a bathrobe. When he took it off, he was completely naked. Ghislaine brought me massage oil and closed the door, and Epstein had sex with me. Kate said she remained in contact with Maxwell until age 24 and with Epstein until age 30. She concluded by saying, "I hoped Ghislaine was really my friend, but she didn't validate what was happening to me." Johanna Sjoberg. Johanna Sjoberg is another victim who provided important testimony in the case. She testified about being touched by Prince Andrew at Epstein's Manhattan apartment. Sjoberg also testified that Epstein once told her that Clinton likes them young. These 4 women testified at Maxwell's trial, stating that as teenagers from 1994 to 2004, they were sexually abused at Epstein's Upper East Side mansion, his Palm Beach estate, his New Mexico ranch, as well as Maxwell's London townhouse and other luxury properties. Chapter 2. The Trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. Justice partially served. In July 2020, the U.S. Justice Department indicted Maxwell in federal court in Manhattan for conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein and sexually abusing minors. Maxwell was convicted in December 2021 after a month-long trial. A federal jury found her guilty on 5 counts, including conspiracy to transport minors, transporting a minor, and sex trafficking. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison and a $750,000 fine. The presiding judge described her behavior as evil and predatory. Maxwell appealed her conviction to the U.S. Supreme Court, arguing that she was protected by Epstein's 2007 non-prosecution agreement with federal prosecutors in Florida. But the Supreme Court rejected her appeal in October 2025. In July 2025, Maxwell had an interview session with Todd Blanche, the Deputy U.S. Attorney General. Blanche had previously been Trump's personal attorney. During this interview, Maxwell insisted that she had never witnessed inappropriate behavior by Trump, Clinton, or Prince Andrew. Shortly after this interview, Maxwell was transferred from a Florida prison to a new minimum security facility in Texas. This facility is called FPC Bryan and is located about 160 kilometers from Austin, the capital of Texas. About 650 female inmates are held at this center. On February 9, 2026, Maxwell appeared before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform in a confidential video session. Despite intense public and legislative pressure, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and refused to answer substantive questions about her role or knowledge of Epstein's co-conspirators and network. Maxwell's attorney informed the committee in a letter that she is willing to speak fully and honestly if granted a pardon by President Donald Trump. The attorney emphasized that neither Trump nor Bill Clinton committed any wrongdoing, but only Maxwell can explain the reasons why. Democratic lawmakers, including James Walkinshaw, said Maxwell is seeking a pardon from Trump. He said, "President Trump could end this today. He could deny the pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, this monster. The question for all of us today is, why hasn't he done it? And why won't he do it?" Chapter 3. Prince Andrew. The Fall of a Prince. Among all the names linked to the Epstein case, perhaps none have fallen as far as Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. The prince, who is Queen Elizabeth's second son, has now become a symbol of scandal and the decay of the British aristocracy. In January 2022, Prince Andrew paid millions of dollars to Virginia Giuffre to settle the case she had brought against him, alleging she was sexually abused by him at the age of 17. This out-of-court settlement was made without admission of liability. Andrew has always denied these allegations. Andrew stepped back from royal duties in 2019 after his connection to Epstein became public. He also relinquished his other royal titles amid increasing allegations about his relationship with Epstein. In October 2025, King Charles III stripped his brother Prince Andrew of all royal titles. He was also evicted from his royal residence at Royal Lodge and moved to Wood Farm Cottage on the Sandringham estate. In February 2026, new documents were released showing that Andrew had shared confidential government information with Epstein. According to these documents, Andrew sent a confidential British government briefing about investment opportunities in Afghanistan to Epstein. Thames Valley Police confirmed it was investigating a complaint from the Republic Group about Andrew's alleged sharing of confidential information with Epstein. In February 2026, American lawmakers called for Andrew to testify about his connections to Epstein. Democratic Representative Ro Khanna told the BBC that the royal family has not been transparent. But Andrew cannot be forced to go to America by subpoena, which has caused much frustration. Chapter 4. Bill Clinton, Unanswered Questions. Bill Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States, is another prominent figure whose name appears repeatedly in the Epstein case documents. According to CNN analysis, Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet at least 16 times in the early 2000s. These flights included domestic and international trips to destinations like Hong Kong, Singapore, Beijing, and London, often with Epstein and Maxwell accompanying him. In 2019, the year Epstein was charged in New York with sex trafficking, Clinton confirmed that he had flown on Epstein's plane several times in the early 2000s, but denied ever visiting Epstein's island. However, there are contradictions on this matter. James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, told Newsmax in August, "The American people want to know what happened on Epstein's island. We know that Bill Clinton went there many times. We just want to ask him what he saw when he was there and who was involved." Donald Trump also posted on Truth Social in November that Clinton spent a large part of his life with Epstein and on his island. But Epstein himself, in an email that was part of thousands of documents released by the committee in November 2025, said that Clinton never went to his island. Epstein wrote, "Clinton was never there, never." Virginia Giuffre, now deceased, had said she saw Clinton on the island, but never witnessed him doing anything illegal. In November 2025, the Republican-led House of Representatives held both Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress for failing to testify in the bipartisan investigation into Epstein. House Oversight Committee Republicans and even some Democrats voted in committee last month to hold the former president and former Secretary of State in contempt. The Clintons' lawyers have repeatedly insisted that they are being unfairly targeted and have called the committee's subpoenas for their testimony invalid and unenforceable. Chapter 5. Donald Trump, Allegations and Denials. The former president's name also appears in the documents, but not as an accused wrongdoer. In Maxwell's July 2025 interview with the Justice Department, she said she never saw Trump in any inappropriate situation of any kind. The current President Trump seemed friendly with Epstein, but she only recalled seeing the two together in social situations, not private situations. Maxwell also said she didn't remember whether Trump sent a note for Epstein's 50th birthday album. Trump has previously denied ever visiting Epstein's island and told reporters in July 2025, "I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I turned it down, but many people in Palm Beach were invited to his island." In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island. The House Oversight Committee released thousands of pages of documents from Epstein's properties in November 2025. House Democrats began the day by pointing to emails from Epstein in which he claims Trump knew about the girls, and another saying Trump spent hours with one of the victims. The White House denied these claims. Chapter 6. Ehud Barak, Resignation of a Former Prime Minister. Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, is another prominent figure whose name appeared in the released emails. After these emails were published, he was forced to resign from his positions. The emails showed that Barak was in close contact with Epstein and even traveled to his island. Barak denied these allegations, but public pressure was so great that he had to resign. Chapter 7. Jean-Luc Brunel, Suicide in Prison. Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent, was another key figure in this case. He was accused of trafficking dozens of girls for Epstein. In 2022, while awaiting trial in a Paris prison on rape charges, he committed suicide. His death, like Epstein's, occurred under suspicious circumstances and raised many questions. Chapter 8. The Victims' Compensation Fund. After Epstein's death, a compensation fund was established for victims. This fund was administered by independent managers and allowed victims to receive compensation without going to court. By 2023, more than $150 million had been paid to over 130 victims. The amount paid to each victim ranged from $50,000 to $5 million, depending on the severity of the harm they suffered. Many victims welcomed this fund, as it allowed them to achieve some form of justice without having to face Epstein in court. But others believed that this amount could never compensate for the psychological and emotional damage they had suffered. Jennifer Arias, one of the victims, said, "No amount of money can bring back what I lost. I lost my childhood. I lost my trust. But at least this fund showed me that someone believes me." Chapter 9. New Documents 2026. What was revealed? In January and February 2026, over 3 million new documents from the Epstein case were released. These documents, released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, included emails, notes, and confidential reports. Some of the most important revelations from these documents include: 1. Confirmation of the authenticity of the famous photo of Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre through Maxwell's emails. 2. Epstein's connection with Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem and the gift of Kaaba cloth to Epstein. 3. Elon Musk's emails about traveling to Epstein's island. 4. New details about Epstein's request for 1,250 liters of sulfuric acid. 5. New images from Little St. James Island. 6. Documents related to Epstein's mysterious will and the 1953 trust. These documents showed that Epstein's network was much wider than previously thought. New names appeared in these documents, some still alive and others deceased. Chapter 10. Epstein's Legacy. Lessons for the Future. The Epstein case had important lessons for American society and the world. 1. The power of money and influence. Epstein showed how money and influence can shield a criminal from justice for decades. He was arrested twice and escaped serious punishment twice. 2. Failure of the justice system. The Epstein case revealed how fragile the American justice system is. A controversial deal in Florida allowed him to continue his crimes for years. 3. Importance of investigative media. Journalists at the Miami Herald and other media outlets played a key role in exposing Epstein's crimes. Without them, the truth might never have been revealed. 4. Courage of the victims. Epstein's victims, despite their fear and shame, found the courage to speak out. Their voices were what finally moved justice forward. 5. Need for reform. The Epstein case showed that federal prisons in America need serious reform. How could an inmate at risk of suicide be left alone in a cell with broken cameras? 6. Transparency of information. The release of documents under the Epstein Files Transparency Act showed how important transparency is. The public has a right to know what happened. Chapter 11. Unanswered questions. Despite all the documents released and investigations conducted, many questions remain unanswered. 1. Did Epstein really commit suicide, or was he murdered? 2. Who ordered his cellmate to be transferred and why? 3. Why were the cameras broken, and why weren't they repaired? 4. Who knew about Epstein's death 38 minutes before the media? 5. Was there an unknown inmate on Epstein's floor that night who disappeared? 6. Who else was involved in Epstein's crimes whose names were never revealed? 7. Why were some of the world's most powerful people never held accountable? Mark Epstein still believes his brother was murdered. He told NewsNation in January 2026, Giuffre was murdered and more facts from the autopsy will be released in February that will prove it. Chapter 12. Summary and Final Analysis. After 5 episodes, we are approaching the end of this documentary series. Let's review together what we have learned. Epstein came from an ordinary family in Brooklyn. With his extraordinary mathematical intelligence, he managed to enter an elite school. From there, he went to Wall Street and amassed a legendary fortune. He connected with the world's most powerful people, a British prince, presidents, billionaires, and international businessmen. He used these connections to cover his criminal network. He lured teenage girls to his island and victimized them. He filmed them and used these films to blackmail the powerful. He once escaped justice with a controversial deal, but the second time, while awaiting trial in prison, he died mysteriously. His death left many unanswered questions. After his death, many documents were released. Ghislaine Maxwell was tried and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Prince Andrew was stripped of all royal titles and evicted from the palace. Victims received some compensation, but many of the powerful were never held accountable. The Epstein case became a symbol of everything wrong with the American judicial and political system. This case showed how money and power can mock justice, how a criminal could continue his activities for decades without anyone stopping him. But this case also showed that the courage of victims and the efforts of journalists can finally reveal the truth. The victims' voices were raised and the world listened. Was justice fully served? No. Many questions remain unanswered. Many powerful people were never held accountable. But at least, the victims were able to speak, and the world heard them. Final words. Dear listener, if you have followed us this far, it means you care about the truth. The Epstein case is not just another crime story. This case is a mirror showing us the ugliness of modern society, unchecked power, legendary wealth, injustice, and the suffering of victims. Our duty as human beings is not to forget, to question, to follow up, so that perhaps one day there will be no more Epsteins who can commit crimes for decades and ultimately die without fully answering for them. Let us not forget Epstein's victims. They courageously spoke out so that perhaps other girls would not be victimized. And let us remember, the truth always finds its way, even if it takes years. Sources. This documentary is based on the following reputable sources. U.S. Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General Report, March 2025. Joint Statement by the Department of Justice and FBI, July 2025. Documents released by the House Oversight Committee, September 2025. Miami Herald Investigations, 2018 to 2024. New York Times Reports, 2019 to 2026. Washington Post Reports, 2019 to 2026. BBC News Investigations, 2024 to 2026. CNN Reports, 2026. Official interviews with victims. Newly released documents in January and February 2026 under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Mark Epstein interview with NewsNation, January 2026. Thank you for accompanying us through this documentary series. I know it took a lot of your time, but this case is so complex and deep that it cannot be summarized in a few minutes. I hope this documentary has been enlightening for you. I hope Epstein's victims are never forgotten. And I hope the day comes when true justice is served for all. Until we meet again, stay healthy and seek the truth. Goodbye.